Hello and welcome to this really special interview with Ben Gomes, Chief Technologist in charge of learning and sustainability in Google. Thanks very much, Ben, who's a Bengaluru boy. Been back in Bengaluru. Hegidira. All well here in Bengaluru?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, lovely to be in this conversation with you. You know, if Google virtually knows everything, what we want to know about Google, we should ask you. Would that be a fair way to put it?
Well, I hope I can answer your questions. I will be trying.
You can try, and you will succeed because Google often gives the right answers most often. You know, I put on Google Gemini, what should I ask Ben Gomes? And it gave me a series of questions. Now, this is what we're talking about today. 5 years down the line, Ben, what is it that we're going to be talking about? What's going to be redefining learning, education, search, et cetera, in terms of the world of technology?
That's a really interesting question. And let me take a step back, though, and talk about where we are today, first of all, right? So today, we've been working for a couple of years on how do this huge new change that AI is enabling in education and learning. It's just amazing because we've got a tool that allows us to use language in a very different way. And so for a couple of years, the research teams at Google have come together to think about how do we enable those language learning LLMs to actually be great for learning. So they looked at the history of pedagogy, the science of learning, and saw there are many principles of learning, like managing cognitive load, making learning be more active. And so we built all of those things into something we call LearnLM, which is the best learning model. And using LearnLM in the last year, we built that into Gemini, and we are now building a whole range of products around that to enable much more active learning across all of Google's products, whether it's in search or in Gemini or in new products like Notebook or in experiments like Learnabout. In all of these areas, we are building the capabilities of learning. Now, if you look forward a few years, what we are seeing is many more multimodal approaches to learning just coming online. You've seen the amazing stuff available with video today, video and so on that we're making available. And that's only going to get more amazing. So you can see audio overviews. You can learn in a multimodal way about the same topic. You can feed what you want to learn into Notebook LM, and it'll give you this amazing audio view and now a video overview of what you learn. So you can get this multimodal way of learning. So that's just getting started. If you look further down the road, I think the whole process of learning has to evolve, not just with us, but with schools and with institutions to develop new ways of learning, to develop those critical thinking skills that are really fundamental in learning. So learning itself, I think, will evolve, but that process will take place through schools, through institutions, and us working with them to evolve that process.
So when you speak of all this, Ben, can you break this down in simple terms? How is a school or an educator changing? I mean, what do they need to understand and how do they change in the approach to learning with all these technologies that are going to be available to them?
The first thing I will say is play with them. Please use these technologies. Unlike other technologies, these are really easy to use. They just require language, which we've always had. So using these technologies, you begin to play and see the capabilities of them. So if you go to Notebook or if you go to Gemini, you'll see guided learning in Gemini, where if you click on guided learning and within Gemini, you can get an interactive learning experience on any topic that'll take you through that topic and help you learn it actively. So I think one thing for educators to think about is how do you make learning a more active process? It is not just reading a book and memorizing things. It is actually engaging with the material, because we know when people learn actively, they learn much better, they retain it better, and they can transfer that learning to new domains. That is a really powerful way to learn, not just for today, not just for an assignment, not just for an exam, but for your life, when you're actually using that information later on in your life. So I think the thing to say is that as educators play with this, they are discovering new ways to learn it, to use these learning tools that are going to be effective for the students that they are dealing with. Now, one of the great properties of these tools is that they can be personalized to any context. They can handle, like Gemini is in 9 languages. We have got other tools that work in even more 9 Indian languages, and we have other tools that work in even more languages. So there's a huge amount of capability to break down barriers that used to exist. A student who might have had some difficulty reading can now use an audio overview. A student who might not have had good understanding of the language in which they're being taught can get that information in a different language that they're more familiar with. So all of these capabilities are possible there, but it takes the educator actually engaging with them to actually make it be used in the classroom. Google Classroom brings a lot of these features together, and we have some teacher training tools as well. But I think what is needed is that educators working actively with the tools to actually push that frontier forward of what students can learn.
What's the process of from a search engine to this learning, the learning technologies, assistive technologies that's coming? And you've traveled with Google for the last 25 years. What's the transformative process here? I mean, what is the evolution from being just a search engine, or for me as a user, what is the evolution from just going to Google and searching for information and now going about learning? How do I redefine the uses that come out of all this to me?
Oh, it's a great question, because when I think about search, the journey of search was itself a journey of understanding language. So one of the first things we did was spell correction. And spell correction was actually an AI process we use. And the person who worked on that went on to write the Transformers paper, which sparked this whole new revolution with large language models. And so search itself has been using AI along the way in more and more ways. The products like Translate, Google Translate, and speech recognition and so on, all are using AI. Now, with large language models, it unlocks a whole new range of capabilities. So if you look at search today, there's AI overviews and AI mode, which unlock the power of organizing information using these new tools, as well as pointers into the web from where the information can come, and where you can go and verify that the information to your satisfaction. So that's the evolutionary process I see for search and for all of the whole range of other tools that we are creating around these new technologies. There's search, but there's also Gemini today, and there's Notebook LM, there's Learnabout, which is an experiment we have launched for learning itself. And there's a whole host of products that are using these new capabilities in much broader ways than were possible before, because they're so powerful.
You know, one of the things educators keep talking about is that it's okay not to teach something, it's worse to teach them the wrong thing, right? So how do you make sure the reliability comes about? Because when you're going to put so much kind of information and you're going to allow young minds to be dependent largely on such generative AI technologies, is it a constant challenge as a chief technologist from your point of view to say, look, we'll have to make sure that the accuracy is there. And isn't that a nightmare eventually, that while technology can unleash great potential, it can also unleash enormous amount of damage if the wrong information goes out there?
So, while it's true that LLMs do hallucinate, there's always been questions about the accuracy of information that you're getting from any source, whether it was a book or the web. You always had to make sure that you understood the quality of the information. You verified it if it was particularly important information to you. I will say with the LLMs, if you look 2 years ago to today, the progress is astounding. So where hallucinations might have been common in some areas 2 years ago, today they are relatively rare. I don't know, in my usage of LLMs for learning processes, it's quite rare to come across hallucinations. They do exist, but it's becoming rarer and rarer over time. And it's a huge focus of ours to make our models, and they're the most accurate models in the world, right? To make our models. And the second aspect of it is, in many contexts, like in Gemini as well as in search, we have pointers to sources on the web, so you can go back and look at those sources and see how much you trust those sources. So if something is very important to you, you can go and verify that information for yourself, see if multiple sources, all those traditional techniques that we use, do multiple sources say the same thing, who is saying it, and so on. All of those things can come together to make sure that you get the information at the confidence level that you need.
One of the reasons you are so invested in learning and education is because it comes from childhood, right? Your mom was a school teacher.
Yeah.
She's now 97, you were just sharing with me.
Yeah.
What does she have to say about all this technology that you're talking about? Does she say, look, education's gotten better with you guys, or no, we've lost the core of it?
It's hard for me to ask that question from her today. But she was, when I was growing up, the thing she taught us was curiosity. She studied geography, and she used to, when you went into a new environment, she'd ask you, like, how do you think those hills came to be? And that sparked that curiosity in us. And I think with these new tools and these new ways of channeling your own curiosity, you can follow those paths yourself. From that early interest she sparked in me in geography, today I can learn about, I've been learning about geology in many ways. It's just a personal interest of mine, but it's the sort of thing that's hard to follow if you don't have the tools to follow it. I got interested in botany and plants during COVID, like many other people. But earlier I was interested in plants. I didn't know, how to actually know the names of plants, and nobody around me knew them. But with Google Lens, I could begin to look at plants and see what type of plant it was and what the relationships were to other plants. And then I found in a small area in California, California's weather is similar to Bangalore's weather. And the same thing is true actually in places like Lalbagh. In a small area, you'll find plants and trees from many divisions of the plant kingdom. Lalbagh is an amazing garden, right? It was created by Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali. And it has such a huge range of things that you'll see from the Amazon rainforest all the way to like temperate regions. And so you can unlock that kind of curiosity. And I think that is the sort of thing my mother helped with for me. And I hope like AI can help for a lot more people who don't have necessarily that kind of inspiration.
You don't need to necessarily have a formal education or go to a particular place. It makes it far more accessible. If you're interested in something and you're curious, I'll make it accessible for you to learn about it. Exactly. That's pretty much what you're saying.
That's what we want.
That's what you want, and down the years, 25 years, and you've done so much on this technology. Is there a moment when you look back and say, oh gosh, what have I done? Have I created, is this okay? What's your big concern when you're handing this over to the next generation? Because sometimes you get an invention and it has its own journey, right? So what's your big concern when you look at all of this as it gets handed over from one generation to another?
I think the important thing is for educators and students to use this technology to actually make learning that active process. That process of investigation, of following your curiosity, not just getting an answer. So I think that is what I'd really like to see happen, whether it's within schools, within universities, that professors, teachers, and so on really play with this technology to see how they can inspire students. This technology can also help them like save time. We see that teachers can save like tens of hours sometimes just because it makes many of the tasks, much more repetitive tasks, much easier to do. And that gives them more time, hopefully, to inspire students. So I hope it unlocks all of those things in students. So that's my hope for the future. And that's sort of like how I think about it, like enabling the best use of the technology. So my hope is that students and teachers and so on in time to come use it for that process to broaden the human mind.
When you're also mentioning about making information accessible, sometimes there's also the concept of too much information, and it can create enormous amount of half-baked knowledge in some cases. And I remember some doctors coming and telling me that often when they tell patients that this is the diagnosis and this is what they do, they go to Google, they check the matter out, and they come back and they get too much information, they get very confused about it and come back down there. Do you believe that this is going to get balanced out as it's still a process that's playing out and people are also getting used to kind of information and learning that's going to be there? And where does the human being fit into all of this when you have so much technology and so much information? Like I asked Google what I should ask you in a conversation. It's going to give me those questions, perhaps better questions than what I would have thought of. It had more information about you than I would have had. Where does that leave me? What is it that I need to learn, most importantly, as a human being while using all this technology?
I think you have a lot of questions wrapped up into that. Let me try and answer some of them at least. So I think the process of processing a lot of information that's coming in has often relied on creating good structure, like managing your cognitive load. So that's one of the principles I referred to in our Learn LM language model, to make sure that you're managing the cognitive load of the person interacting with the LLM. So in this context, with guided learning, we try and limit the number of things you're presenting to the user, the learner at one time. So you're not overwhelmed and you actually absorb the information and you're active in that process. Secondly, I think like making sure you get the structure of what you're learning, right, is important. It's not enough to just know a collection of facts. you need to actually create a structure around the information so that you have a way to reason about it. And that, again, is we have these products that allow you to do a quiz yourself. That allows you to inculcate the information in your mind in a way that's a bit more structured rather than just a heterogeneous collection of facts. I also think that the schooling system over time has to focus more on building critical thinking skills so that you can actually absorb information in that structured way. I think that's a fundamental way in which we learn how to.
Okay, interesting that you're saying that, and in a country of India's scale and size, what would you believe are the key challenges? Because it's also about making education inclusive. It's about taking it to different social strata, inclusive in terms of bringing those with learning challenges into the realm of education and learning. What would you believe are the crucial challenges as far as India is concerned?
I think making the scale of the opportunities enormous, and one of the key things that I think the challenges that AI can address is actually language barriers and things of that sort. So Gemini is available in many Indian languages. There's a product we have called Class Tools on Chromebooks that allows the teacher to speak in either Hindi or English, and the students can read the text closed captioned in either English or Hindi or in 200 other languages. So the access, making sure that everybody has access to the underlying technology is a core thing that we need to make sure that is possible. But India has made huge progress there. 800 million Indians have gained access to all of this technology. So next step is making sure that everybody is using the technology in the best way.
And in terms of making it, as you're pointing about multiple languages, from a technology point of view, is there any key challenge that exists in India from your point of view that to take this kind of technology to the scale of people around the country?
I think making sure that both the people have access to the technology and the hardware and so on, and the connectivity that is needed for this is very important. A lot of progress has happened, but there's still further to go. And at the same time is making sure that the teachers and educators and all are informed on how best to use this technology and give good information to their students.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Google Gemini and some of the questions that it prompted to you. It wanted to ask you, what is the one thing you were extremely proud of in the last 25-year journey in Google? Something that you think, defines your time at Google and perhaps Google's reach around the world itself.
That's an interesting question because 25 years is a long time. There's lots of different projects involved. But I'm actually really proud of the way in which it's a subtle thing, but the way in which we kept Google always focused on what the user needed. And that takes the form of many different things that we created, from like the knowledge graph to now all of the AI things that are being built into Google. So that journey of using technology but connecting to the user, what the actual user need, is what I felt was the thing that it's not a personal thing. These are all things done by large teams, right? But I'm very proud to be in part of that journey.
Interesting that you say that. When you say need, and as we go forward, what is the one thing that you think is the area which is yet unexplored? Because often we talk about what we have today in front of us. And Gen AI, I think we're beginning to comprehend the power of Gen AI, whether it's Gemini, whether it's ChatGPT, any of those forms. As we go forward, what's the one thing we need, most important thing in your mind that's needed, both by people in terms of engaging with them? Is it trust? Is it a sense of greater reliability? Is it also about giving people what they need more than what they want in terms of information and what they consume?
I think the question of what people, what is needed in the future, I think is a different interaction with information. I keep coming back to this, but I think the fact that information is now an active process fundamentally changes how you can interact with information. That it is something that you can own as your journey. So I think that getting people to realize that even for myself, I'm embedded in this technology and I often don't realize all the power it has in all the things that I'm trying to do. I'm an amateur woodworker. I'm interested in geology. I'm interested in plants. I'm interested in lots of things. And every time I come back to these tools, I realize it can take me further on that journey when I use these tools. But realizing that, I think, is what's needed.
Fantastic. Since you're a Bangalore boy, if you were to meet the students at St. Joseph's now, who want to be innovators one day, who want to dream big in terms of it, what would be that big advice that you'd like to share with them? To innovators across the board, young innovators who are looking at technology, what would be the advice from you?
I think the world today has far fewer limits than it ever did. You can learn anything. Right? There were times before when I was in school, there was a limited set of books, a limited set of things that people knew. Today, if you're interested in something, you can learn about it. You can play with active ways of doing it, whether it's with tools and even with hardware today. And I think opening your mind to those possibilities and not feeling too constrained by just what's in your books, what particular people have told you, like thinking and dreaming of like what the problems are you'd like to solve in the world, and then dreaming about those solutions, I think, is what I'd love for people to see more of.
One of the problems we've been struggling to solve in Bengaluru is the traffic, and I'm sure Google may get a lot of traffic online, but it cannot solve that traffic problem in Bengaluru. But that's a fantastic conversation, Ben. Of course, it was a wide-ranging conversation, broad subjects, but thank you so much for making time to speak with us here on NDTV, and all the best on all the initiatives that you're picking up.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. That was Ben Gomes, Chief Technologist at Google, who's looking at sustainability and learning. Thanks very much for joining us here.